Live on Jeff Darty's channel, and that should do it. And in fact, that has done it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We're so happy to see you here again this week. And Wayne, it was my pleasure to be on your show on Friday night.
It was a blast. Good show, good reviews. Had a good time, my friend.
It was very nice. It was awesome. And we're expecting that Derek Rose, Global Witness, might show up today for our first guest ever. Maybe he's a little bit earlier than we are, so if he comes, we'll be glad to have him. If he doesn't, we'll miss him, but we'll make it happen at another time. And Wayne, I did a show this morning, a morning mantra this morning about worship. And I was asking the question of, why do we feel the need to worship? Are we worshiping out of a lack of having a sense of self and completeness within ourselves? And then I asked, why would any deity want or demand worship? Would he be doing out of a lack within himself? And I got a very thoughtful comment from a devoted Christian. And there are some of those that still watch, Wayne, in spite of what we talked about.
Brave people.
But he said this to me, and of course, I spent 20 years as a pastor, or 20 years as an evangelist mainly, and I led a lot of worship services, and I taught about worship and how worship, the Davidic pattern of worship is to start with thanksgiving, then move into praise, then move into worship. And it's really actually to induce a trance state, and we'll talk about that. And this Christian man, very kind note, says that worship brings balance. It stops rage. It makes you think about life, kindness, and love. It has many benefits that come from it. The music, the message, the psalms make you feel good. And of course, he said, come join me for a session and you'll see. But what do you think about those words, Wayne, coming from that devoted Christian fellow who is, a very nice guy?
Perfect psychops, as you and I know. In fact, in most Baptist seminaries, they will teach you don't take the collection till after the worship.
And that's true, because you want to get people in the right frame of mind. And I'm also a master practitioner of NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, from my prior life. And this has to be said, but both of these statements have to be said, I think. The Christian worship service, as you said, it is a psyop. It is a very well orchestrated, very finely tuned effort to take you through celebrational thanksgiving, move you into mid-level praise, then get you into deep worship. It is intended to induce a trance-like state. Now, that being said, we have to admit, Wayne, that in the New Age and the Truther movement, we do a lot of meditating and mantras and things, which are also designed to move you into a trance-like state. And I think the real issue is, when you get into this trance-like state, are you accessing, are you reaching, are you touching something that is benevolent for you, or something that is less than benevolent for you? And at the end of the day, Wayne, we have to, I think, allow everyone their opportunities to get to that place of trance or worship or meditative state, and let them decide whether the entities that they're engaging with are ones that are positive to them or negative. And we really can't mandate that from outside, can we?
No. And when I hear the term worship, there's two types of worship. There is a collective worship, and then there's the individual worship. Each has its own purpose and result.
Wow, tons of people in the chat room already, Wayne.
Yeah. Good morning to everyone. So when we come together in a collective communal worship, there is intense power.
There is intense power.
Just by the fact of so many Homo sapiens coming together. We all generate 20 watts of electrical power. You start bringing in 10, 100, 1,000, and they're all focused in on one thing. You're opening up a huge portal.
Wayne, that's amazing. As you say that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I got to get this out. I remember being in a soccer stadium it was either Buenos Aires or Managua, Nicaragua, but there's like 100,000 people there. And it was a worship service. And I'm standing on the platform. It almost feels like your hair is standing on end. It feels like you're almost levitating. So think about that, 20 watts times 100,000. You can figure that out. I can't, but that's a lot of power.
Well, think about when Bernard Bonnke and his crusades in Africa, 1.3, 1.5 million people gathering at one time. I'm going to tell you what, you don't need to be a god. You could be literally an ET flying over, and that's going to send out a signal. You're going to go, whoop, what?
Wow, that does send out and forget about the spiritual aspect of it. It just sends out a powerful, energetic. Is it electric, Wayne? Is it electricity?
Yeah, it is. It actually transcends into the ether.
So when we're in these gatherings, I mean, we've got a church right down the road from us, Coral Ridge Presbyterian, and they probably have, I would imagine they have 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people on a Sunday morning. So that's a beacon, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Energetic emanation. And the interesting question is, we're talking about worship. Who responds to those beacons? Because, you know, something notices it and is going to hone in on it.
Precisely. You know, I'm doing this origin series, and I was reading this morning.
Nice to see you, Rocker Chick.
Hello, Rocket Chick. Gary, how y'all doing? Some really weird things. So we have been from birth taught that this inaccessible, indefinable deity called God exists. And we have been taught that God is spiritual, not material.
We have been taught that.
This, I think, is the great lie. Because if you take the fact that we were not created in some garden by some magical being who just simply spoke and trillions of cells suddenly came together and the genetic code, et cetera, et cetera.
Wayne's working on reducing our Christian audience again.
That, let's say that we were in fact genetically modified from the apes, the humanids that were already here. And we know that. We know that the science is taught now in the Human Genome Project, and now we're into Human Genome 2, actually decoding the mitochondrial DNA, that there's a 2% difference between us and our distant cousins.
Right.
Just 2%.
Between us and the chimpanzees, I think it's 2%.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And that 2%, within that 2%, there is 6% of us that doesn't belong to any vertebrate, any invertebrate, any other mammal or mammal class on this planet.
So that means that stuff had to come from somewhere else.
Exactly.
And Wayne, some people in the chat room are making a great point too. Let's take it just out of, you know, Christian church circles. What about these great stadium concerts? Like I saw the Rolling Stones at the Tangerine.
Same thing going on.
What about NFL football Sunday mornings at Mile High Stadium in Denver, Colorado?
Always a sellout. Same thing.
And you think that's the same electrical energy?
It's the same thing.
That's a crazy question.
Yes, sir.
I think about places like Denver, Colorado, Denver Broncos, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Green Bay Packers, Buffalo, New York, Boston. It's December. It's below zero. People are out there in the stadium, 80,000 people. There's players on the field. I've always wondered, and I've played football at the collegiate level. I played in super cold places, and I didn't take advantage of this because it was very, very small college football. But does that electricity somehow come together to help keep those people and those players warm?
Yes. In fact, I'll share a true story with you. Dan Deerdorf, who was the nose tackle for the St. Louis Cardinals in front of Jim Hart, told me that he said, the thing about it is that when you walk out on this, he said, whether it could be 100 degrees or 0 degrees, he said, he said, it's a current. Man, you plug into it. And he said the crowd can literally influence the team. If the crowd is like down and depressed, it's transferred directly over to the team. Transcendence. You were just talking about that word. So let me just finish my point. What if the Elohims, which the one that we so often refer to as Yahweh, which is only one of the Elohims, what if they were never spiritual to begin with? You know, everything about them, when you really begin to read it in a different lens, shows that these beings were more materialistic. And in fact, I'm reading right now Leviticus in a whole different light.
What do you mean, Wayne? You mean they really weren't spiritual beings?
Not at all. We don't know who created the Elohims. They never told us who their gods were. They never showed us any form of worship. They never showed us any indication that they worshiped anything.
So we just assume that in the beginning, the Elohim created the heavens and the earth.
Yeah.
And we just assume that they were spiritual beings. Well, yeah, we assume they're spiritual beings, and we don't know who created them. And I guess if you really get down to it, we don't know that they are. All we know about them is that they were male and female, and that they were gods and goddesses, whatever that means. They were supernatural male and female beings. That's really all we know. Juliana asked, did they worship themselves?
Good point. I sent Rex an email because I know Rex has some insights on potentially. I haven't been able to find it yet. Now, I've read the Emerald tablets and what have you, but when we just asked the basic question, they never told us. They never did. And I contend Yahweh, two things I'm going to propose, Jeff. Two things, that when Solomon betrayed him, and Solomon did betray him, betrayed Yahweh, that Yahweh left. Now, my question is Yahweh dead? Or has he just left in anger of what, the betrayal, the last betrayal, as he said, what Solomon did to him? Two possibilities.
Well, Wayne, I don't know if you remember, but I think it's 6, 7, 8 months ago, I thought I got messaging and am very much convinced that Yahweh was gone. I thought he might have been banished by the other Elohim, but there's no doubt in my mind that Yahweh is no longer on the scene.
He is not here anymore. No.
And I was reading this book, Stellar Man, and it's a great book. I recommend you read it. And this author makes the statement that Moses, having rebelled against Egypt and not being totally thrilled with his heritage either, actually entered into a covenant with an extraterrestrial entity, which took on the personage of Yahweh. And that's really who Yahweh has been the whole time, is some extraterrestrial entity that came down, usurped the name Yahweh. I don't think that was really his name. And for years and years and years, he's been around, but I think he's gone. And it's interesting. You think he might have just left because he was sick and tired of us monkeys. And I was wondering if he got banished by the other gods for crimes against humanity.
Well, here's the thing. When we put this in context of the Old Testament, Yahweh never went outside his borders. He was defenseless against chariots. That's in Judges 18.
Defenseless against chariots.
Yes, when you read, in fact, I'm reading that right now, with the tribe of Judah, I believe, as they were going in, he didn't want Yahweh's help. And because the thing that they knew about Yahweh, he couldn't be trusted.
Right.
Moses knew this. And in fact, Moses, the Kevod, K-E-V-O-D, Kevod, was what Moses wanted to see. He didn't want to see Elohim. He didn't want to see Yahweh. He wanted to see a ship. And it was very interesting. So I've been reading. This is one of the most disturbing things that I have come across. In the, what's the Latin? The Vulgate. The Latin Vulgate. They use the word for Eve, and they use the word beguiled.
Beguiled.
Beguiled. She was beguiled by the serpent.
Mm-hmm.
And this really, I was up at 4 o'clock this morning because this has really bothered me. It is most likely Eve was raped by the Elohim.
Really?
Repeatedly. And they give us clue to this when she said, the word beguiled means to be sexually seduced totally.
In what context does beguile mean that way? And are you coming from an ancient language, from the Latin?
You can come from the Webster Greek. You can do the Latin. You can look at the translation of the word. Beguiled means to be sexually seduced. That's another meaning for the word. And if you begin to look into the meaning of sexually seduced, it means to be taken by force.
Yeah, I'm just looking. I just pulled it up on, to just put it into Google. I need to get deeper into it. It says to charm, to attract, to enchant, to entrance, to woo, to captivate, to bewitch, to spellbind, to dazzle, to hypnotize, to mesmerize, and the very last one, Wayne, says to seduce.
We never look at it that way. Eve was raped by the very creator. I think that may be why Lilith, if Lilith exists, and then we have to give it some crane, even if it's a monocle of credibility, maybe that's why Lilith rebelled.
I think Lilith existed for sure. I really do. And, you know, the story that we're told in the Nag Hammadi text is that her and Adam, and of course we're not talking about probably specific people, but her and Adam were created as equals. And then Adam wanted to usurp that and make her a lesser person and be the boss, and she rebelled against that. But what if she rebelled against being Yahweh's mistress?
Well, Yahweh does have she's called Astroth. I've covered her extensively. So, but here's the question. In the Apocrypha, the pseudo-Apocrypha, the book of Adam and Eve, Adam had to be taught what sex was. And an angel in the cave of the everlasting is where him and Eve supposedly stayed.
And this is in what? Where were you reading this in?
It's in the Nag Hammadi. It's in the book of Adam and Eve.
Okay.
Yeah, I've read it. In fact, I did a whole thing on it.
Cool.
The angel came and taught Adam how to have sex with Eve.
That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Actually, it does. I mean, if you were initially by yourself, and let's say you were a hermaphrodite, let's say you had both sex organs, and then you went under anesthesia and they had to extract stem cells from you in order to produce your opposite in a genetic experiment, which was a female, how would you know to have sex with her? How would you even know what sex was to begin with?
That's a lot of interesting stuff right there, Wayne.
Well, it's common sense.
Yeah.
It really is. We're not taught to think of Adam and Eve in coitus terms.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm just thinking of, I mean, where that scenario presupposes that Adam was created a hermaphrodite, and you know, I understand where you're coming from. It's definitely not the traditional or the Hebrew textual version of it. It's expanded to a lot of the other texts and putting a lot of things together. It's a very interesting path you're walking down. I can see the logic and the way you're connecting the dots. Just a little uncomfy, Wayne.
Well, it is uncomfortable because maybe the original sin was never a sin against the Elohim, because here's the difference. What was taking place supposedly in the garden is not the same Elohim that we see with Moses. There are two different Elohims in there. And maybe the original sin was not so much the fact of gaining of knowledge as it was reproduction.
So they didn't want man to be reproducing.
Yes, because we were never meant to have a spirit. We were meant to be basically clones, workers. The problem was we were a causality effect. When they created it, we became sentient.
Right.
And that was the problem. We became like God.
Because we had the power of procreation.
Yes.
But we didn't have it. I mean, but and now you start thinking about, are we really becoming like God? Because now we have the power to go into our own labs, like many believe they went into labs, and begin to do creation, not just one at a time, but we can now create, all these test tube babies, and we really have moved into the realm of the Elohim.
We have. In fact, Peter Thiel is taking his new startup, just got FDA approval Thursday. This will be the first of its kind and many more to come. Jeff, gene splicing for certain genetic diseases.
And what does that mean, Wayne?
It means, for instance, you have MS.
Okay.
It's a death sentence for you.
Right.
Let's say you have Parkinson's. It's a death sentence for you. Alzheimer's is a death sentence for you. Now we can go in and we can extract certain genes from you, extract them, inject them, modify them, alter them, and re-inject them back into you to now where it begins to rebuild and repair that genetic code for you to be having that disease.
Wow, so you can actually be healed of this disease
genetically
through your own genetics.
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting. That's very interesting. And this is, you said this was just approved by the FDA this week.
Yeah. Yep. Peter Thiel's company. And people who don't know who Peter Thiel is, he was one of the founders of PayPal. He was also was one of the founders of LinkedIn, was also one of the founders of, there was one other one. So yeah, he's done very well.
He has done very well. It's interesting how one guy gets all these great ideas.
But the thing I will say about Peter's awake.
Is he really?
Yes, sir.
And he started PayPal, LinkedIn.
Yep, he was one of the PayPal mafia.
And what does that mean?
You have to study. It's one of, in the payment industry, we know of the movers, and what PayPal did was literally it advanced electronic payment to where today it's commonplace.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So Peter made billions on PayPal, still is. Was one of the first investors in Facebook. I mean, he's right there. But the guy is awake.
The implications of that statement are rather staggering.
It is, isn't
it? So worship, whether it's Christian, getting into a trance meditative state through thanksgiving, praise, and worship of the Davidic, or David, the sweet singer of Israel, the psalmist, he kind of put that program together, if he was real, or meditative mantra use in the New Age and truthers to get us into that meditative state. We're really using the same tools to get to the same place, and it's just it's a question of who do you want to tap into and what do you want to get back, isn't it?
It is. It's odd that you say that. Well, I was making my tea before I came in here, and I just had a transient moment. I just was transcended into another place, and I was like I was on a mountaintop, and this has happened in a split second. But I understand now why all the religions. I get it now. You see, the Elohims never taught us what to do spiritually. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't care. We do. And we are probably as much of an oddity to them as they are to us, because they didn't give us a roadmap to understanding the spiritual. But because of our innate nature, as a byproduct of what they did, we are seeking the spiritual, and thus we go into 10,000 different directions.
So you think the Elohim weren't particularly interested in spirituality?
I don't think so.
That's interesting. Naughty Beaver's in the chat room, and
hey, Naughty Beaver
makes the statement, religion is a stepping stone to faith. How would you respond to that?
Define faith.
Yeah.
You know,
and just off the cuff, Wayne, I would say that, religion to me almost, and we can talk about this, religion to me is almost a blockage for faith.
Yeah, because can I give an example? All right, so we have a Christian, we have a Jew,
right?
We have a Muslim, and we have a Hindu.
Right.
Whose God is right?
Well, you'd have a big fight in your hands if you asked that question.
Whose God is right? You see, that's the problem why I don't agree with religion. Religion is a coitus trap that once you get into it, I think it takes you further away.
Yes, and I remember something that one of my mentors, Dr. Andy Toltek, and I still don't know if he was a real person or an astral person. It's just the craziest thing ever. But he was always chiding me for being too hard on Christianity, saying that Christianity was used in some way to bring us through to the place where we're now able to get into true spirituality. That may be what Naughty's thinking about, it has been sort of a schoolmaster to get us to the place where we can understand spirituality. So I guess I can maybe understand that, but I just have a real hard time wrapping my mind around how a fear and guilt control matrix can be helpful to us, Wayne. I'll be just frank with you. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around that.
Well, when you begin to realize that the New Testament and the Bible that is now considered the King James New, and that's a whole thing. People don't read the history, but let's get back to specifically 478 to 504 AD.
Okay.
I am talking about a man who is now in Caesarea, living in a cave. And he has taken it upon himself, because of the wish of the Pope, to put the translations in the proper order. This man sits down and begins to rewrite, putting and interjecting his prejudices, his bigotries, his perception of what God is into sacred writings, which today people hold up as their sacred holy Bible. Right. Never realizing that this man literally injected a mind virus, and I speak specifically as Isaiah 14. As he read this, as he wrote in his personal notes, and I'm speaking of Bernard, Saint Bernard, that it was inspired upon him that the original intent was not clearly stated, that this was a deity that had opposed God, the antithesis of the Christ, and injected the word Lucifer. And from there sprung a whole new mind trap because of one alteration. And this cat just didn't with that. There were other key passages that he did it as well. This is history. I'm not making this up.
Gives a whole new meaning to it. When you think about Saint Bernard, it gives a whole new meaning to the old term, lie down with dogs, get up with fleas.
Yeah. This guy, this is why I don't believe in religion, because religion is predicated on the perception and lenses of one individual.
Or at the very least, a small group of individuals.
Started with one cat. Somewhere got the idea. And I don't want to allow my destiny to lie and rest in some pervert's idea that I don't know who and what he was doing, because here's the problem. The Christian religion, the Catholic Church itself, is predicated on pedophilia, incest, homosexuality, all in the guise of a religious doctrine of a Christ.
And it's kind of interesting, like Rocker Chick just says, you got G-O-D, with one little change, you got D-O-G.
Exactly.
And it goes back to Saint Bernard again. Folks, it's interesting when you start drawing some corollaries between some things.
Yeah, and this is how us humans, we're so desperate to have that path laid out before us. And again, when a religion is predicated on a goal to entrap you, then that's not a religion at all. That is nothing more than slavery.
It's an opiate for the masses. I mean,
it is.
Constantine knew it. What's his name?
Let's talk about Constantine.
Stalin
knew it. You know, I mean, we've seen it throughout man's history. And the thing about Constantine,
I don't think Donald Trump doesn't know it.
Exactly. Constantine has been sanitized by the Christian Church.
By the Catholic Church, at least.
Yeah, specifically. He was a Flavian. People don't know that.
What does that mean, Wayne, that he was a Flavian?
We go all the way back to Vespasian, Titus, Dalmatian. We go through the Caesars that took on the Flavians. It was the Flavians, the Herodians, and the Alexandrians that gave birth to what we call Christianity today.
And Paul was, without a doubt, a Herodian.
He was. Yes.
That's indisputable.
His family's business was in Alexandria.
It absolutely was.
How did he get, people never put the two and two together. They get the idea that Paul went out there and was somehow or another dyeing these tents and what have you. What they don't understand is how they messed it up. Paul's family were Roman citizens. They knew Vespasian.
Yep.
They got the contract, folks, when Vespasian marched into Palestine with 170,000 foot soldiers, which you don't read about. This was go ahead.
Well, I remember when I wrote Apostle Paul Antichrist several years ago, that was one of the things I brought out that I took a lot of heat for, but people don't realize Paul left just before the destruction of Jerusalem. How did Paul know that Jerusalem was about to be destroyed? Because he filled the order for this tents with the Roman army.
I mean, it'd be like having a contract today for an Abrams tank. I mean, folks, this family, Saul, was filthy rich.
He was Dick Cheney.
He was. I mean, this dude, and what people don't understand, why I got attracted to Philo, because Philo is the father of the modern theology of the Trinity.
Philo is interesting.
Read it in his Cosmos.
Yeah.
And it's right there. He's the one, he was a heretic among the Jews.
Yeah.
He brought in the concept of a father deity figure that had a spirit, that had a savior attached to it. And all Philo was doing was following the heretic teachings all the way back to Greece.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was nothing new.
So anyway, we all got started on that.
And like Gary says, Paul was Dick Cheney, and his family ran the Halliburton of the day.
They did. They
were the greatest. They were the largest defense contractor. They were arms dealers.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you couldn't say they weren't making the swords, but they were making the tents that housed the dudes that were using the swords.
I'll tell you what. Now,
Philo.
Philo. And if you read the search, one of the most interesting things about that is that there is a hypothesis that Mary was eventually adopted by, who's the dude who provided the cave?
Joseph of Arimathea?
Joseph of Arimathea was the richest Jew of the day. Why, folks? Are you ready for this? He controlled all the mineral rights for the Roman Empire on the eastern part.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
It was said that when Joseph supposedly died, Joseph of Arimathea adopted Mary because she was with child.
So he was the Joseph that was supposedly Jesus' daddy.
Yes. They took Mary and Jesus to Alexandria, where he was raised. In those travels, he went to Britannia and spent nearly 10, 15 years up there, and then eventually came back and made his sojourn, and we know the story.
Interesting. That's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
That's fascinating stuff. Wow. So Mary, very interesting. Puts a whole new spin on things.
Mary was extremely wealthy, and you have to ask how she moved with immunity in the background of the four Gospels. Jerusalem was a military occupying force.
It was.
People don't understand that. It was occupied, folks.
It was. And think about it. Let's just assume for a moment that Jesus is a real person and everything that we read was real. You got a guy that's got 12 dudes with him and at least one woman, so they got 13 people, and they're going from town to town to town, doing their meetings. I was an evangelist for 20 years. I know how this works. So we had a evangelistic team of 13 people. He didn't have a job. How did he afford all this?
Yeah.
Somebody was giving him money.
Had to be. I mean, they were writing it out to the First Ministry of Jesus Christ Incorporated.
And if Mary was rich, that answers some questions.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what's so odd, if you do I guess you would do the genealogy. What's that?
Candace types in just holy beep.
So
I feel you.
The fact is, if you read about Lazarus and his two sisters, they were also very wealthy.
Maybe that's why Jesus raised it from the dead.
They had an interest in the frankincense and the spice trades. Why?
That was super expensive.
Exactly, because it came right in from the Silk Road right into Jerusalem.
So I hate to be the skeptic here, but if her brother controls the frankincense trade, it really was no big deal that she was pouring the ointment on his head and his feet, because she could get it for free.
She already was part of the family business.
Yeah, so it really wasn't that big of a deal, was it?
No, and they get us on the mind coitus again. Well, how did she get this stuff? I mean, if it was rare. I mean, only the rich, the very rich.
Take off, right?
Yeah.
All that money we could have sold that frankincense and given that and fed a lot of people with it.
Yeah.
She's like, my brother gave it to me. Get out of here.
Yeah. It's like, what you talking about? Get that coming out of my face.
When you get to these places where you actually start looking into these things, it's not holy. It's not like painted on the wall at church. It's not like the stained glass. These were real people doing real things. And when you get into it, you're like, wow, we have been sold a bill of goods. It's just, you know what it's like, Wayne? It's like, it's a reality TV show.
It is. The Truman Show.
It's a reality TV show.
And it blows your mind, because there is still
keeping up with the Kardashians. It's the same thing.
It is. It was the time and era. And what's always been a mystery, the first century was the most prolific century of writing. But yet, when we get to this central part, of which was a major military conflict, it was costing the Rome Empire what would be the equivalent today of millions of dollars a month.
Yes.
For this occupational force. And the wars, if you read Flavius Josephus, and you read the War of the Jews, what gets me? 20,000, 50,000, 104,000 dead in a battle. How does that happen, Jeff? I mean, that's a slaughter. Blood being spilled on a scale that we don't even know, can fathom.
Josephus wrote that 1 million people died in the siege of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
1 million people.
That's incredible.
That's 3 times the population of Jerusalem on normal times.
Yeah. It would be the equivalent of taking out Denver, all the population.
Wow. And I know I shouldn't say this, and I'm going to upset some people, but just let me remind you that 1 million people died in Jerusalem. Paul knew it was coming. And what did he do? Did he warn people? Did he say, hey, get out? No. He got on a donkey or whatever, got on a boat, and got his own butt out of harm's way and sat by and left 1 million people to die from starvation, cannibalism, disease, thirst, hunger. The writer of 2/3 of your New Testament tucked tail and ran like a cur, scurvy, cowardly dog and let 1 million people die instead of spreading the news, get out of here, trouble's coming. What do you think of Paul now, ladies and gentlemen?
And if you get the Bethel Bible that I have, that you can order, they have the 29th chapter of Acts in there.
Really?
Yes, they do.
And what's in that 29th chapter of Acts?
Paul leaves Rome. He goes up to Germania on a missionary mission and ends up settling in the upper valley up there in the north of where we would call that fertile area up in Germania. That's where they say he lived a very good life.
Interesting. I lose track of him about 68 AD when he's what they called a valet to Caesar in Rome. A valet means you don't have a real job. You just sit around the palace and do whatever you want. But I couldn't track him past 68. I'll have to go look at that
I'll
stuff.
send that to you. It's actually in the Bethel Bible. So it was fascinating. And it made sense, because why would Nero kill a Roman citizen? He couldn't do that.
No.
Not even a Caesar can do that.
Well, Paul outlived Nero. Nero had taken his own life there before, either right when Paul got back to Rome or just after Paul got back to Rome.
Right after the burning?
Yeah, but no, just before the burning of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was in 70, and Paul was back in Rome late 68, early 69. But that just testifies to Paul's power again. He wasn't tied just to Nero, because wasn't Nero the last of the yeah, Nero was the last, and the Flavians, and what were the ones before them called?
The
right? I
yes.
don't know who they were.
Yep.
But Nero was the last one of that line. But Paul managed to survive right from Nero into the Flavian line without a problem.
That's what got me.
Palaces.
How was he? Exactly. And I'm going, wait a minute.
Thank you very much for that super chat. I appreciate that very much.
By the way, Jeff, I did find something in my library that I know you're going to enjoy.
God's plan for man.
Phineas Dake.
That's Finest Jennings Dake.
It's actually him preaching it.
Oh my goodness! I've got that book. I've had somebody.
If you'd like, I'll actually send
gave me that book.
Yeah, and here it is. Here it is, right here. You can see it. There he is, right there.
Oh my! That is the. You can't get the Holy Ghost if you don't listen to it.
So I just wanted to let you know.
That's amazing. And this is the Dake's Annotated Reference Bible. That's what I always preached out of.
Yeah, he did.
Swaggart said, if you don't have a Dake's Bible, you're stupid.
Here's mine. And the thing about Dake, though, he believed that there were other species on other planets.
He did.
Yeah, he did. He actually goes into great depth in his notes. Explaining how Adam, and now I'm looking at
That's
this.
God's plan for man.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm going, wait a minute, Phineas. I think you may have something he'll chop.
I think you may have something. Yeah. It's so amazing how, it's crazy.
Someone wanted to know where that was. It's in the Bethany edition of the Bible. They say it's the most accurate translation from the Jewish Latin.
It's called Bethany?
Yeah, give me 1 second and I'll pull it up off my shelf. Hold on a second.
Wow, this is just amazing stuff to think about this. I don't have any video of my preacher days, Catherine. Somebody probably does somewhere, but I did my best to get rid of everything that I could. In fact, when I moved over here to Fort Lauderdale, I actually disposed of the last of my old sermon notes that I had. I found some sermon notes. I used to keep them in these manila folders. This is, back before the internet was real big. And I got rid of them. So I've done my very best to purge the world of any part of my former Christian ministry. So if it exists, it means I missed it.
This is it right here.
The Sacred Scriptures, Bethel edition.
Yep. And in this one, give me 1 second. We still got these.
Wayne, so I'm just going to answer it. If you do the super chat donation, YouTube takes 40-50% of that.
They do.
If you want to donate to my work, I really appreciate that. You can just go to my website, jeffreydarty.com, hit the donate button. I wouldn't have said that, but someone did ask the question. What are you looking for there, Wayne?
Oh, here it is. It's the 28th chapter of Acts, right? Let me see.
How many chapters does Acts have in it? I forget.
I forget as well. It's been a while.
I'm looking right now. I think it's got 27, doesn't it?
It is. It's the 28th chapter, and I was right. And here it starts out, very interesting how it starts out on this. It says, and when we had escaped, then we knew that the island was called Malta.
No, Acts has 28.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm looking for the 29th. Give me 1 second here.
And interestingly enough, the 28th chapter of Acts is about Paul tucking tail and leaving and bailing out of Jerusalem because he got the big tent order and he knew it was coming down. And I'm sure the Caesar had already told him that too.
I'm going to have to find this. Lynn has it. I can't find it in this one here.
It says it's available at scribed.com, Acts 28 and 29.
Thank you. Can you pull that up if it's online? It's an interesting story. Y'all just do it later, and you'll really get into it. Again, it gets back to this whole thing. It's about money. Those who control the money, and it's throughout all of our history. I sometimes I feel like we're just serfs, we
are pawns on a board. We're pieces on a chessboard.
Yeah, it bothers me, Jeff. It really does. Because I want an afterlife. I believe There has to be an afterlife. I don't believe in reincarnation. It's never bore witness to me on the inside. I'm not saying it doesn't. I just don't, with this reiteration of me.
Yeah.
But I just can't think that we go through this and then there's nothing left.
Ruthie asked this question, Wayne. Is the Bible story the biggest conspiracy theory ever?
I believe it is.
I think it's probably just the biggest conspiracy ever. There's no theory about it.
Yeah.
Like Elvis said, the world's a stage and each of us play a part.
And we do. That's why I don't like the idea of prophecy. That the fact that if Revelation is true, then all we're doing is just playing a scene. We're out playing a role.
Here's a great statement from Naughty Beaver. He says, Jesus said the truth will set you free, not the Bible.
Ooh, that's profound.
In fact, Jesus said, you study the scriptures because in them you think you have eternal life. He says, but I have come to show you the way, the truth, and the life. So I'm sorry, folks. Jesus said, you can study these up one side and down the other, but the ways to eternal life ain't in here.
Can I give you a thought on the Christ?
Please do.
So, I've been one that...
I'm in New Testament.
Oh, wow. That thing has gotten how many times? It's like my guy who's still like Jesse's Duplantis. He says, what?
Yes.
Your Bible is new and perfect. He said, you ain't reading it. He says, if it's worn, then you're born.
Absolutely.
Let me just give you an idea. And I've been thinking about this.
Thank you for that.
I read this to you. I've been thinking about this. I think that when we were created, that they didn't realize that we became sentient, that there was a spiritual part to this. That I think that freaked them out.
Wayne, did you still believe in a creator of all? True Effect asks.
I believe in the substance of that. I don't know if the infinite being is a material, concrete essence of a life form. I think that my point of this. If man can think of a God, then that's not God. There's something even above that.
Michelle, I believe I am 100% in agreement with you. I think Revelation and Genesis happen concurrently. It's the same story told twice. There's a reason why one's the first and one's the last. The first shall be last, the last shall be first. It's the same freaking story.
Ooh, good. So I wrote, however, and I wrote this to you, and I've been meditating on this, Jeff. However, the gods did not know was that when us, Homo sapiens were born, a new spirit being had been reached out to the cosmos, and a new unknown frequency known as man was born, and the cry was heard by many, and many came to help man to become a sovereign spiritual being.
Wow. Why do you think so many were willing to help man become a sovereign being instead of squash him like a bug?
Because I think we were unique in this. I think that all other civilizations have been around for a very long time. Sentient beings, and this, we want to call it on the physical plane, because we're born in the physical plane.
Right.
I believe that there are those that are ascended, that assisted those other civilizations. And lo and behold, because of a reckless group of a species known as Anunnaki, came through, and they were doing what we're doing today. I often wonder if we actually have done this and we've given life to these different hybrids. Have we created a new spirit being? I believe that's what happened to us. And I believe that there are many that heard that cry and realized that we were a divided race, many different races, that we weren't going to be unified. And that's why many different voices come to teach the way of the Christ.
Interesting. Naughty Beaver agrees with the Genesis Revelation statement I made. That's interesting. That makes me feel good.
So,
Wayne, I just wonder why they wanted to help us instead of squash us. But I guess there's benevolent beings out there that want to assist in the ascension, if you will, of races that have some potential. So I guess some people think we have some potential.
I think we do. I mean, what if the thought is that the Elohim, the Anunnaki, took control of this planet?
So you think the Elohim and the Anunnaki are the same people?
Yeah, I just think that the Elohim are a higher class of the Anunnaki. Otherwise, then the Sumerian text wouldn't make sense. Who is Enki? Who is Anu? Who is Nema? These characters that eventually blended into every religion and every pantheon that's out there.
Wow, interesting stuff. So, is there a Planet X floating around out there somewhere, Wayne? And are they coming back?
According to the Vatican, yes.
What do you mean, according to the Vatican?
Yes, under the Sectarium Omega document that was, the meeting that took place with Eisenhower in 1954 in February was attended by then Bishop of LA, John Francis McIntyre to be exact, and he was a witness to that meeting. He went on to the Vatican to inform Pope Pius XII, and it was upon that understanding that Pope Pius XII started what was the Vatican's CIA, called the SIV. From there, they began to realize that there had been a change in the United States government. Right. Even Eisenhower was out of the loop on a lot of this. By the way, Bishop McIntyre was threatened by the United States Air Force that if he discloses that they took an oath.
You told me this story.
Yeah, and so everything is lined up. Lockheed Martin is a part of this. They have a contract with Sprint International. They sent the probe. What we do know is that this was a new propulsion system called Aurora, and that is an electromagnetic pulse engine that apparently can haul ass. We know that they have their
technical term.
It is a technical term. But yeah, so they were warned, Eisenhower was warned that this planet is coming. It's in a orbital long period, but the inhabitants of this planet are warlike. And this is what has bothered every pope to this very day. They know. That's why the Second Vatican Council, too, was formed, was how do they tell 1.2 billion followers that God is not God anymore?
Wow.
And
we live in some interesting times, my friend.
I just want to finish one part on this. What Pope Pius XII found out, they couldn't be trusted. They lie. They deceive. And by the way, Eisenhower found out the same thing. The problem with Eisenhower in the United States was directly threatened. And you can go and look into the Washington Post, July 7th to July 12th, 1954, folks. Check it out. The Washington, D.C. was under siege of fleets of UFOs. Yeah. Parking over the White House, parking over the Capitol. Our jets were ineffective to them. They show up on radar and then they not show up. That is what I'm talking about.
Wow. And again, I just wonder, why haven't they just nuked us?
They need us for something. And maybe they might end up, listen, we're a virus to them, to the Anunnaki. We now probably outnumber them. Wow. We're like rabbits.
I know Laura Eisenhower and hold her in high regard.
Yeah, I had Laura on. She is a delight. She is a very awake individual as well.
Absolutely.
And you would have to realize that if your family knew, they don't believe in Jesus, they say that Jesus never existed. What they were attracted to was the message of the Christos leading to the divine.
See, Wayne, that encapsulates my entire life and my entire work right there.
Yes.
Plastic Jesus isn't real, but there's a message of the Christos that has, like nothing I've ever seen, the power to transform, change, and empower lives.
Yes, and that's what attracted them.
Be a heretic. Make it with a capital H. I'm a capital H heretic. Make sure you spell my name right when you call me heretic.
And don't call me Sue. But there it is. And so this is what Pope Pius XII took to his grave. Now, Pope John the 23rd, he was the one who broke the contract. He was the one who said, screw this. He said, it's obvious we disagree theologically. And the Catholic Church cannot work with you. We will be brothers with you. And in his pontification speech in St. Peter's Facilla on St. Peter's Square in 1963, he said, there are voices that are now known that were unknown in the heavens. Yeah. And they declare the omnipotence of our God, and we call them brothers.
Whoa. That's some revelation right there.
Yeah.
Not the book of Revelation, some real revelation.
So I love this. You know what, Jeff? We're a unique species, and I hope that we get our act together. I really do. What I think we do here each morning, what you do each day on your daily mantras and your shows, along with everyone else, Rex, there's so many people that are coming into this. We're all getting this.
We're doing our best, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
And the more that we know, the more we know that we don't know.
That is, I think, what humbles me the most. I wake up in the morning in awe now.
Yeah.
Can I just share something with you how I've become now? There's a little my wife hates spiders, but there is a spider on our kitchen window that I have been watching now for the last 3 or 4 days. And how I got to know this little guy is that I almost killed him.
Is he inside?
He's right on the screen, on the inside of the screen. Yeah. And like I said, I almost killed him. And he had this little tiny gnat or something that he had gotten. Well, he fell to the inside of the window, and, you know, so did the little gnat. Well, the little guy kind of shook himself off, like what happened, went and got back his food and went about. Well, I've been watching this little, and you know what? I asked myself, is he aware of God? Is he aware that he's a spider? Does he think about where he sits in the cosmos?
I don't know, Wayne. That's an interesting point to ponder.
I don't know.
But you've obviously learned something from watching the spider.
I have. I've watched him in the way that he reacts to temperature, environment, how he is obviously a great meditator.
I'm wondering if that spider's somewhere right now talking to some other spider saying, there's this human that keeps watching me.
You know, but I look at
about God. I wonder if he understands.
Exactly. Does he know what we know?
Does he
I bet he's searching. You know, but I do know this, that spiders obviously spend a great deal of time in meditation.
One would think.
I don't know, Jeff. I'm just pointing.
One would think. They have a lot of time to think, that's for sure.
They do. Well, this has been a good show.
A scripture about consider the spider and about him spinning his webs and stuff like that?
I think it's in the book of Proverbs, isn't it?
Yeah, consider him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Think it over, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. Well, Wayne, we kind of covered from A to Z today, from Genesis to Revelation and back again.
I think we did, and probably added a little bit more to it.
We did, and I don't know how it's going to be received by our audience, but we know one thing: there's no holds barred, there's nothing held back, and I think everything's delivered with a good spirit and a good intention. Sometimes it might be a little strong, sometimes it might stomp on your toes, but Wayne, I don't think I used to be mean-spirited. I don't think I'm mean-spirited anymore. I don't think you're mean-spirited.
I haven't killed the spider.
Exactly. How mean could you be? You haven't killed the spider.
You know, my yard is beginning to look like a rabbit nursery.
Sophia is deathly afraid of any bug, so I don't know how a spider would fare if he came in here. I hope they'll stay away, because I don't want to kill them either.
You know, by the way, in this study I've been doing, and I did not realize that in Genesis 18, do you know that angels ate meat?
I have not seen that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, why did that escape me? But it's right there. You know, Abraham slaughtered a calf, prepared it for the angel.
Did the angel eat it?
Yes. Yes.
Wow. So was it an angel, or was it he just thought it was an angel, or are angels not what we think they are?
I think they're Anunnaki.
They're just they're able to move across dimensions, materialize, dematerialize. Wow.
Yeah.
Wayne, I'm almost 40 years into this, and I'm just, again, I don't even know. I barely scratched the surface. People, you're just on the tip of the iceberg. No, I've got down one snowflake level on the top of the snow that's on the tip of the iceberg.
Jeff, it's a wild ride. You know, someone was asking, do I believe in God? Let me tell you, I do believe in the infinite being because I'm connecting into that power source. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think it's like John McCain. They said one of the things before he was still.
Did he die?
Yeah, he died last night. And they said that in the last week when the cancer had gotten so bad, as my wife said, he's been comatose. But the last things he said was, you know what? I hate to go, but no regrets.
Wow.
And I think that may be our point, that's what we're all going to say. I hate to go, but what a ride.
I met him in Phoenix Airport, just walked right up to him, and we had a little bit of a terse exchange. I was a Pat Buchanan guy back then.
Oh.
I was actually working for Pat, and he was in a campaign against Pat. He called Pat a Nazi. And I walked up to him, and he signed his book, Faith in My Fathers, I think it's called. And I said, Senator, I appreciate your work, but you owe Pat Buchanan an apology. And they say he had a terrible anger, and I saw it kind of flash at me, like he was about to say something. He kind of chuckled, and he said, I've talked to Pat. We're okay.
Yeah.
I saw that McCain anger flash.
Yeah, I've heard it. I heard some stories on in the chambers.
He's much more disfigured physically than you could tell on TV. So,
listen,
for his country. I know there's a lot of controversy about him, but we don't want to speak ill of the dead. We'll just say, rest in peace, John McCain.
Well, I wasn't in a Vietnamese prison either, and what he went through is going to change an individual.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And if you didn't,
it's been another great hour.
It has been, Jeff. I enjoy these. They are exciting. They're never dull.
I wish that Derek would have been here, but maybe it was good that he wasn't, because I don't know. We'd still be going over the first point if Derek were here. It'd be a 4-hour show, and I got things to do today, and so do you.
Yeah, well, let's get him on here anyway. I think Absolutely. It would be very good, and I'm looking forward to it. Jeff, Absolutely. My friend, it's been fun.
It's been great, and thanks so much for being here, Wayne. It was great to be with you on Friday night, and we'll have to do this again sometime. How about next Sunday?
Let's do it.
All right. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, for Wayne Steiger, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. This is not your normal Sunday show, and you are certainly not your normal Sunday audience. We appreciate every one of you, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.